Hey, good morning, everyone. Running a little bit behind schedule on the post that we had from last night, but today want to go over some of the bills that we've got in legislative session. We've got a link, public link to a Google Doc that we shared last night that is where we're compiling all of the legislation that we're throwing we're throwing the links to all of the bills in there as we go along. Today we're going to focus mainly on House bills, and what we're going to do here is, as we all know, we've got a huge pile of bills in front of us. And so what we want to do here first is this: we're going to break this into basically two videos because there's going to be a lot. And what I want to do here on the first video is we're going to focus on bills that are good, bills that are helpful to our potentially helpful to our community and our industry. Because, a lot of times what's been lost in the public conversation about our program is just how much good has come from it. The thousands of businesses have been created, 45,000 jobs occurred, according to the state labor department, have been created by our industry. I mean, this is something that State Question 788, when it was passed, opened up $1 billion industry. And so that's what we're going to do is we're just going to start off and we're going to give a rundown because there are actually a number of decent bills out there. And then we get through those, we'll cut this one off, and then we're going to go into kind of a breakdown on some of the other bills that are out there, such as the crypto bill, cashless system, so on and so forth. So let's see here. To start off, we've got House Bill 3929, which is process validation, and this is carried by Pfeiffer of the House. What process validation would do is it would allow businesses that are doing things right and making inspections are good, testing's good, to be able to work off of basically their SOPs and say, okay, here is a consistent process that we are using. The methods are the same consistently. And so it would allow those businesses to be able to kind of streamline their processes and save some money on testing. We've got a lot of duplicative testing. Testing's a hot topic. Labs are a hot topic right now, simply because there's not necessarily a lot of consistency coming out of the labs. There hasn't been. It's a real big issue, but House Bill 3929 by Pfeiffer of the House would give us process validation, which isn't a bad deal at all. So let's see. Next on the list would be, okay. So House Bill 2025, which is the visible signage bill. What they're looking to do here is require especially grow operations, to have signage that would identify with the license number what that this is a licensed cannabis grow, a licensed marijuana grow. And the thing is, I mean, yeah, we're already required to post signage for inspectors when they come through that indicates, that this is a licensed business, like a lot of other businesses do with their tax commission numbers and such. And, this is something that, there's kind of two sides to this. One is that, it kind of alerts folks that, hey, there's a marijuana grow here. Which we've got concerns. We've seen some shady things going on, and with people impersonating enforcement officers and such, and that's not necessarily a good thing. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that in some places we've got some overactive we've got overactive neighbors per se. We've got overactive law enforcement that might, complain first and ask questions later. So there might be something to be said for having it posted. If you've got a big outdoor grow, it's going to be visible as hell anyway. So it's not like we're trying to hide anything. So this isn't something that, is necessarily really just a bad bill. One big concern that we have, though, is that we always have to keep in mind that industrial hemp is grown in Oklahoma, that there are hemp licenses and hemp fields that are growing that if you're just driving by could look the exact same as a marijuana grow. And so if what they're trying to do is eliminate confusion, legislature might consider, addressing the hemp grows. And I mean, if you're going to require it for cannabis, then require it for cannabis, especially visibly from a road. Why not do that? It's I think what my concern here is that we create a situation where, all of the marijuana businesses are required, licensees are required to have this, and then the hemp folks aren't. And then folks that are growing hemp, run into a situation where local law enforcement gets confused, neighbors get confused, and, give those folks a hard time over what's a hemp field. So, cannabis is cannabis. If we're going to require signage for one, then, maybe we should look at asking the hemp folks to have a sign over there on their grow. So let's see. House Bill 3891, which is by Townley and Grigo of the House and Weaver of the Senate, is a bill that would basically it would prohibit grows and processors from being within 1,000 feet of a school. It's got a grandfather clause in it. This would bring it in line with what dispensaries are required to do right now. There might be some concern about the way that preschools are defined. We always have to watch that because those can pop up in a lot of places. The obvious concern here is that this does become over restrictive. It's almost kind of a wash. The other thing that could potentially be done to improve this bill is that, okay, so we had a situation in Sand Springs where Tulsa Community College worked with their city council to prohibit a grow that was within 1,000 feet of the TCC campus, I believe, in Sand Springs. But then a couple of months later, TCC turns around and is now offering cannabis education courses, I believe with a company out of California, possibly. And so this bill could be improved and get some clarification here that what if as education of cannabis comes more into the mainstream, if we prohibit these operations within walking distance of a campus, then we might be missing an opportunity here to increase that access to education, cutting off partnerships, So this 3891, again, it's got a grandfather clause for businesses that are, grows and processors that are already within 1,000 feet of a school. I don't know that there are a huge number of them. If you are within 1,000 feet of a school and you're a grow or you're a processor, please consider making sure that your odor control is up to par, because because that can kind of catch heat and really bring on more stuff like this. So just try to, if you're there, try to be a good neighbor. Let's see. Okay, House Bill 3634, which is a wholesale license by Fettgetter and Davis of the House and Rogers of the Senate. We'd expressed some concerns on this bill because the way it was originally written would have become very, very prohibitive for at least growers, if not processors, to actually have the ability to contract with, say, more than one. Grows would have an interpretation could have been that grows would have been prohibited from dealing with more than, say, one processor or one packaging company. And so we had some conversations about it, and my understanding is that a couple of words will be changed that will fix that. And if that's fixed, then this is not a bad bill. It would allow for a little bit more flexibility, and folks that are really distributors or wholesalers that are working under transport license, this would kind of give some more clarity to what's going on there. So House Bill 3634, if the changes are made, that minor changes are made, then this really wouldn't be a bad deal in our opinion. Okay, let's see which one's next. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about House Bill 4055, which is by Marty and Davis of the House. And what this is a utility reporting bill. And basically what it requires, it require utility companies at a minimum and other, and then to a degree, the operations themselves to report what the utility usage is. Our real concern with this is that it becomes a slippery slope, and this is where when you stand back and you look at this entire list of bills that is out there right now, the big concern here is that they all would have a cumulative effect, and it could be positive, it could be negative, but our real concern here is exactly what gets done with the data that would come out of 4055. Would it, our understanding is that it would, the intent is for it to be used for determining, trying to determine diversion. And that concerns us a lot. It wouldn't be bad to just have utility companies reporting data to the state to kind of get an idea of what the exact electrical usage is, exactly what the water usage is. These aren't necessarily, bad data points to have, but if, like we see with other bills, what this does, is it creates a situation where, folks in a tower downtown get software, a few points of data, and then attempt to determine, what your actual production is. And, any farmer will tell you there's no way that you can predict what a crop is going to do from a computer downtown. It just doesn't work that way, and if they say, well, you use this much electricity, you should have produced this much weight, and you didn't produce this much weight, therefore you must have sold it to the black market, then it's ridiculous. Again, it's literally, you'd have bureaucrats saying, okay, based on your electric bill, here's what you should have done, and if it's not this, then you're diverting product. So we've got some real concerns about what happens with this. And, there are, there are some other places in agriculture, such as where you have to get permits from the DEQ to use a certain amount of water. You kind of have to, you have to have a permit to basically say, here's how much water is being used. I typically use this around center pivot irrigation and such. So, it's not wholly out of the norm, but I would say that right now 4055, I'm just, there's still a lot of questions around this, and exactly what does this do to be just generally invasive to our grows, and how much again, does the state decide, well, we've got some data here that tells you what must have happened in real life? Real enforcement doesn't happen from an office, it happens with boots on the ground. One thing I want to point out here as we go along is that I see some questions and some feedback coming in, and kind of watching that. What I want to let everyone know is that as we do this, we're working to basically just try to keep this conversation going and identify these things and put these things in front of you. We'll go back. We'll go back here in a minute and try to answer a couple of the questions, and I'll go through a couple of more bills first. But what we'll also do is we're going to continue to put these videos out and say, okay, here's what we're seeing and here's what we're doing. So yeah, Karen, that's a good point. So let me run through a couple of more of these real quick, and then we can double back to a couple of the specific questions, because yeah, Karen, you're right. I mean, it's already stated that they're not supposed to be visible from though, but they can get an exception for that. So it's something that we definitely need to look at and talk about a little bit more. Again, a concern that I've got is, well, what about hemp on signage? Let's see. Okay, so here's another one, House Bill 3827, and what this is this would require outdoor grows to register with the Department of Agriculture Sensitive Crop Registry. Department of Agriculture has a place on their website, and we'll get a link shared out at some point here to let folks know what that would look like. And what it is say orchards, vineyards, apiaries, beehives, watermelon patches. They register their location with the Department of Agriculture, and then herbicide sprayers, pesticide sprayers, are required before they spray an area to look on this map and see if there are sensitive crops in the area that they should avoid in order to prevent overspray, drift, or volatility of their products from killing these sensitive crops. And basically the way it works is that if you are in this sensitive crop registry, if you've put your grow in there, and then you catch drift from, say, 2,4-D being sprayed on cotton, then what you do is you call in the Department of Agriculture. Don't wait. It has to be done immediately. Call them in. They'll send someone out. They'll take a sample of the affected crop. Doesn't matter if it's, peaches or pot, and they'll test it, and if they do find that there's 2,4-D damage, then what you have is you have the foundation for a insurance claim. Aerial sprayers and other applicators are required to have insurance, and so this is just a kind of a common sense bill. It's something that's already there. No new system has to be created. We'd like to see OMA put this into that registry when they're processing the applications. But if just growers, regardless of whether this law, House Bill 3827, winds up being passed or not, if it doesn't, growers, you should be doing this anyway. You really should, because it covers you. It protects your crop. This is actually, this hasn't occurred a whole lot. I think in interim study last year that ODAF said that there have been 9 reported instances in 3 years of drift hitting cannabis crops, and last year there were 3 incidents reported. 1 of them was verified. So while it's not a huge problem, especially if you're an outdoor grower, I'd encourage you to go ahead and register in the crop registry and it's a protection for you. So let's see. House Bill 3813 is House Bill 3813 would give OMA's investigators basically full police power. So beyond the inspectors that OMA has, they have 4 to 6 investigators who are CLEAT certified law enforcement folks. And so what this bill does is it would basically bring the OMA investigators in line with other law enforcement as far as their ability. So it's not a wholly unreasonable bill. Okay, we'll do this last one and we'll see if there's any other immediate questions. House Bill 3971 is a secret shopper bill. Now, this is interesting. What it would do is basically OMA would have a secret shopper. They would come in and purchase 5 samples, 5 of a product, enough to get test samples going, which I don't think they'll be so awfully secret per se, because they've got a set amount of things that they're supposed to buy, so it would be kind of obvious. But here is what they accomplish by this. This is obviously a product safety measure. And so, first, dispensaries, that means that OMA's going to be buying product from you, hey, right? But if they do, what happens is they take 5 samples. And 4 of those samples are then given to 4 different laboratories. One of them is kept for the OMA quality control, lab. Chris, it'll be on the ODAF site. I'll get that link posted up to you here after this. We'll stick it here in the comments, or we'll get it sent out. But it's if you Google Oklahoma Department of Agriculture crop registry, it'll come up for you. So with the secret shopper, so they come in, they buy 5 samples, 4 go to labs, typical labs, 1 goes to the quality control lab. So they have the labs test. Now I don't think it specifies whether they're going to pay the labs to do this testing, but they would have the labs do the test. If the product tested fails 4 out of 4 labs, then OMA does a quality control test on their sample, and if their sample verifies all the other labs, then there's a product recall, a public notice of a product recall. And so here's what this really does, and this is something that very well might be needed, and that is it's a real-time quality control check on the labs themselves. Saw a video last night. And it's something that really, it's not common knowledge, but it has kind of been known that the labs are not proficient, and this is costing a lot of us a lot of money. It really is bad to know that you can go to a lab, get a test, and John, if it passes the QC lab, then it looks like what they would do is they would go back and shake down the other labs and figure out what they did wrong, is what it's looking like, John. So this is actually the first bill that I've seen where you would have basically kind of like real-time quality control on the labs themselves. So this would be, John, I know this one's probably of interest to you, so remember, it's House Bill 3971. One thing everyone will just double back and note, we posted, and we'll do it in a pinned post here later today, but we've created a Google Doc that has got live links to all of these bills in it so that you all can basically come check the top of the ORCA Facebook page, and you're going to be able to see what we're doing in real time, tracking these bills, what the current versions are, and we'll have some commentary in there. If you've got comments or think that we're off base or something that needs to be added to that document, just send us a message and let us know, and we'll take a look at it. If there's some of these topics in here that we know that not everyone in our community and industry agrees upon, and that's cool. We are not opposed to saying, hey, we've got a point counterpoint section in here, and if we don't have a position that necessarily aligns with someone else, but we see a lot of other folks are saying, hey, we're for a moratorium on licenses, for example, then we'll say, hey, okay, make your case, and we'll plug it into the doc, and anyone that reads the doc, they can decide for themselves and figure out what they want to say when they call their legislators. This doc is much like the petitions that we did. It's an open source deal. We really, really are trying to push the educational side of what's going on here, and we believe that this stuff needs to be done as transparently as absolutely possible. So 3971 is the secret shopper bill. Let's see, Chris, have we got any immediate burning questions that I haven't addressed yet?
Yes. Stephen Pale out of Tulsa has asked, is HB 2025 a scarlet letter?
So that would be the signage bill. Yeah, I don't know that it is. It might be. What it fundamentally is, and this is the real reckoning, is, do we want it just big as hell publicly that there is a marijuana grow here? And, it can kind of, on one hand, a case could be made that, this will actually protect you from overzealous law enforcement. Like Karen had noted, a lot of these, there's a requirement by OBNDD to have fences up and to hide it. But this is one of the things with that is that when in rural communities, when all of a sudden there's a big fence put up around something, that's almost as big of a red flag that there's a marijuana grow there as anything else. And that's actually an interesting topic too, because there are a lot of places where if the fence wouldn't have been put up, it'd be a lot harder to see that there was even a grow there. So it's an interesting question. I'm not going to say that. I'd put it to you like I'd say this as of now, where we're at with it is that it's not the end of the world. There are a bunch of other bills that are really hyper detrimental to not just our industry, but one that's detrimental to society as a whole, the way that we see it. Yeah, I think that's something we ought to have some more conversation about on that signage.
So one more question that I think is very pertinent. Does any other agricultural industry have the same standards that are being set forth? That's being asked by John Wall.
No. The standards that are being, or the proposed standards for the cannabis industry, are way above and beyond what are required for agriculture. And we've got a big problem with that. I spent the last 3 years doing scaled outdoor grows myself, and doing out around a lot of other agricultural stuff. And like for example, one thing that's in our mind that's wholly ridiculous are plant tags. We don't believe that putting an RFID plant tag on a plant does a damn thing to prevent diversion. And so we don't require plant tags for any other crop. There are a number of things. At the end of the day, plant tags basically on one level killed cannabis production as an agricultural commodity to agree. So, and then they're extremely burdensome. And again, they don't do anything to prevent diversion. I don't know of I don't know of other crops that are required to say have the utility company tell the regulator what your electric usage is. I mean, again, it's a real slippery slope, and I think the fundamental problem that we have here, exactly, wheat doesn't require tags, cotton doesn't. It's kind of tomatoes don't. So this kind of points to a fundamental mindset of what we've got going here, and that is that we need to be forward thinking and not backward acting. We need to work to bring cannabis more into the mainstream, and it seems like what's going on in most cases here is that there is this regression where we're moving. A lot of this legislation moves us backwards here, and so at the end of the day, cannabis is a plant. It grows under the sun. It's an agricultural commodity, and so we need to really work on treating it like such. Because the thing to keep in mind is the more regulations and the more burden that you put on producers, the more incentive you give them to divert product. Or in a sense that you make us less competitive with the black market. If the black market doesn't have all of these burdens of production, they can produce cheaper than what regular businesses can. So yeah, I think we definitely need to try to keep this in the direction of treating this more like a typical agricultural commodity. And Rachel, that's a good point about bringing things in the mainstream with the divisions between rec and med. Marijuana is marijuana. The difference between medical and recreational use is a question of intent. Why are you using it? And so that's it. I mean, it's the same thing with Xanax. Are you taking it medicinally, or are you just taking a whole bunch of Xanax because you want to take a bunch of Xanax? And again, that's why really until we pass recreational, it's going to be hard to divide medical from. It's going to be hard to kind of overcome that. So let's see. All right, I'm going to hop back into the bills. Okay, so House Bill 4111 by Dick Lowe. What this does is it removes in statute right now, OMA is only allowed to inspect you twice a year, yet we know while they have zero inspections in some areas, they are inspecting some businesses more than twice a year already. But it is in statute that they're only supposed to do 2 inspections a year unless they, have serious cause to believe that you're doing something outside of regulation. So 4111, what it would do is it would simply remove that limit on inspections. So it's not a bad thing. Of course we could get concerned about well, are they going to be inspecting us every 2 weeks? Folks, they're playing catch up. They don't have the inspectors to go overboard at this point in time. If they are, now organizationally, if we are, if some business finds yourself in a situation where you're being picked on OMA, if you feel like you're being picked on OMA, that they're coming in and inspecting you 12 times a year for some reason, and you're obviously passing, they just seem to be hovering on you, we want to hear about it. But 4411 doesn't seem, that seems fine. Let's see. Okay, so House Bill 4288. House Bill 4288 requires an expiration date to be put on edible products. This this right here, just when we talk about coming into the mainstream, we have expiration dates on other consumer products, and so we don't see that that's a bad deal. Let's see. House Bill 3019, which is Fettgetter of the House and Leroy of the Senate. It allows for clear containers to be used, but requires that those containers or the packaging requires those to be put in an opaque package before they go out the door. So it's kind of like going into a liquor store. You buy a bottle of liquor and they put it in a paper bag or a plastic bag. So it seems reasonable. It's a decent bill by Fettgetter. Let's see. Let's see what else we got here. So we've got a few others that are kind of up in the air. Again, there are as we're all working together to track this stuff. We'll remember we're going to pin the open doc to the top of the Facebook page, and encourage folks to go in there. You'll see in there that all of the links are live links, and they'll take you to the current version of the bill. We're also going to put the voting records in here so we can all know who was voting on what, and we will continue to update this document with commentary. Just try to more analysis and such as we go along here, and we'll continue to hop on and start working down and have more concise explanations of what's going on. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to we're going to cut this one off. I want to break this into a couple of segments here today, and what I think we'll do here is we'll come back here in about 15-20 minutes or so, and we're going to get into the bills such as fee increases, cashless cashless payments, basically the crypto bill. And we're going to get into the stuff that we've got serious problems with and that folks need to be aware of. That crypto bill is especially troubling. I mean, at the end of the day, it's broad ranging enough to where what it would set up is it would set up basically a cashless society, and it would use our industry as the guinea pig to figure out how to do it. This is not just a bill that, we're on it because it applies to us first, but everyone in Oklahoma should be concerned about that thing. So we're going to hop off of this one just to keep ourselves from having, hour-long, 2-hour-long lives, and we'll take a little break, and we'll come back, and we'll speak some truth to the, some of the more ridiculous stuff that's coming on. All right, we'll see y'all in a little bit.